Welcome to In Her Voice. My name is Kelly Covert, and I am passionate about helping women live authentically by listening to their inner voice. Get ready to be inspired by women of all walks of life that have set aside their should-bes and not good enoughs and are standing in their true voice, the voice of wisdom that each and every one of us has inside. Hello, everyone. This is Kelly, and you are listening to In Her Voice, and I am so excited that you decided to press play today because I have the amazing Lane Kennedy on, and we are talking about healing yourself through deep listening, and it is so good. You guys are going to totally love it. It's interesting. It's not what I expected. Well, I'll tell you more about that in a minute, because first, I want to tell you about today's sponsor and always the sponsor of In Her Voice, and that is Beautycounter. And, I realize that maybe you're wondering, what does Beautycounter have to do with listening to your inner voice? And I will tell you, it has everything to do with choosing you, with making yourself a priority. Because just like you think about what you put into your body, what you eat, the way you take care of your skin and the things you put on your skin is just as important. And I stand behind Beautycounter's mission to put safer skincare into the hands of everyone. And here's the thing too. It's okay to give yourself a treat every now and then. And if you're going to give yourself a treat, Beautycounter is the way to do it. And on a personal note, I decided to become a Beautycounter consultant because I needed to find a way to support this podcast. Podcasting, if you don't know that, is not free. There are costs involved in podcasting, and I'm passionate about getting this message and bringing my guest's message into the world. This is one of my purposes in life. I'm positive, and I really needed to find a way to support the podcast and do it with something that I really believed in. And that is why I chose Beautycounter. So every time that you buy any product through my link, kellycovert.com/beauty, you are supporting me and you are supporting In Her Voice, and you are helping get this message out into the world at the same time that you are making yourself a priority. So if that is something that you're interested, head on over to the link and check it out. If you have any questions on what would be good for your skin, you can always reach out to me via email at kelly@kellycovert.com or on Instagram at kellyjcovert. Those are the best places to reach me always. So let's get back to Lane Kennedy because, oh my word, you guys, she is super cool. Let me read you her bio. With more than 20 years experience in biohacking for health while living in long-term recovery from alcoholism, Lane Kennedy brings a wealth of knowledge and passion for helping others find bio-individualized wellness. Since conquering her own health problems and immunity syndrome and chronic pain, she's become a tireless advocate for anyone struggling or stressed and looking for revolutionary solutions. Lane is a graduate of Dave Asprey's certification program that helps you learn how to teach others to optimize their own biology for their best possible health. She works with clients on real alternatives to conventional medicine, including deep mindfulness meditation practice. As a businesswoman, Lane considers herself a serial entrepreneur and enjoys coaching entrepreneurs with her thorough understanding of stress and building businesses. And, when I first invited Lane to be on the show, I thought it was really interesting, sort of this meeting point of biohacking, which is like super geeky science, right? And listening to your inner voice, which is on the other end of the spectrum, like super woo-woo magic. And I do think there's a place for those. And I think that Lane really dives into this, what seems like a paradox, in such a beautiful way. And she really is so transparent in sharing her own story and her own struggle. You guys are really going to love this interview. Let's get right to it. Lane Kennedy, I'm so excited to welcome you to In Her Voice. Thank you so much for being here.
So grateful. Thanks for having me.
Oh, likewise. Grateful is a wonderful word. My words are not going right today, because that's exactly how I feel whenever I have someone new and get to spend time with someone. It feels so just wonderful. And I thought that today, what would be a great place for us to start is just with your super interesting life story, but the quick version.
I know. I'm like, okay.
When I was born, no.
The long story.
Because what we're really diving into is deep listening, healing yourself through deep listening. And I think your backstory is such a big part of that for you and how you came to understand that. So
there's layers.
Yeah.
There's so many layers. I'm just going back 20 plus years of layers. Okay, so let's start with, in my earlier days, I was super attracted to always having fun. Like, who doesn't like to have fun? Like, everybody. But right. I was that girl. I was in the fashion industry. I was lucky enough to have a long career in modeling, and I did that for a long time, but I found myself drinking and using to the extreme and really having to kind of hang up that part of my life for a while. And so I've been in long-term recovery for 21 years now. And that's a really big part of my deep listening and knowing when to stop and trusting the process. And so living in this long-term recovery has uncovered a bunch of, health. There's health things that come up along the way for me. That's been my story. It's all about finding my health, my happy health. Because what happened when I put down drinking is that my body started to break. And the doctors had no idea what was going on with me. I was diagnosed with an autoimmune condition that wasn't really an autoimmune condition, because 23 years ago, people weren't really talking about autoimmune conditions. They weren't even talking about going gluten-free, right?
Right.
So it was a very different time. That's when the AIDS epidemic was really kind of big, and people were really, putting money towards that. And I kind of just got thrown into that category of like, okay, your body is attacking you, and we don't really know what to do for you. And so that's where my journey began. The doctors had failed me, and I was paying a lot of money for these doctors in Beverly Hills, and they just said, we can't help you. And so I've had this message of we can't help you a lot through this, my story. And so what that's forced me to do is look for alternatives and look at different ways to live and to heal my body. And at first that was really intimidating because, again, I'm air quoting biohacking. Nobody was talking about this 20 years ago. Nobody was talking about messing with your hormones when you were 20 something years old. That was unheard of. But for me, I was, taking high doses of crazy different supplements and drinking olive oil and just crazy things that people were like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? And through this process, right, I've waxed and waned on this healing journey. And what that's given me is a whole bunch of data and information and blood work, because I track everything that I do. And it's given me this massive body of work that I can now help other women, find the solution for their body. Mm-hmm. And, when my hair was falling out and my skin was turning yellow, and my agent said, I think it's time for you to take care of yourself. That wasn't really I didn't want to hear that I had to take care of myself. Like, I wanted to hear, like, yeah, you booked the next job, or yeah, you've got this. So this idea of taking care of myself and taking time off was a big, huge leap of faith. But I'm so, so grateful that I did that and dove into this journey of, finding out what supplements did and what vitamins did, and really what plants do for the human body.
Mm-hmm. So, I have like a whole list of questions I wrote down.
Oh, good.
But the first one is, I feel like it's so interesting that you stopped drinking, then your body started breaking down. And I mean, I feel like that's kind of ironic, right? You think, oh, I'm doing this thing that would be good for me, that's going to help clear my brain and help me get sleep better and, all of the things. And then that's when things started breaking down. And I just wonder, like, what was your reaction to that?
Oh, I was devastated. I was like, wait a minute. I don't understand. That was my question. Like, I didn't understand. Like, I had just put down the best thing in my life, so I thought. And now my body was falling apart. And I can't even imagine what it would have looked like if I hadn't put down the bottle before that point. Because I feel like my body was already breaking down. But I wasn't awake enough to be paying attention and seeing the signals.
Right. Well, and I think what's so interesting about what you said just then is that if you hadn't have put it down, it probably would have been even worse. And I think that goes to show that the things that we're doing now have an effect on us 2, 3, 5, 10 years. Yeah. It actually really does matter. It does. What we're doing now in the long term. And I'm thankful that you're sharing this experience, because I think it's just a good reminder that our choices today really do make a difference in our life tomorrow. So my next question is, okay, so you talk about all of the data, like you monitor everything, you get blood tests, all of these things, which I by the way, like I totally, if I allowed myself, would totally geek out on that. But also I'm sort of like an all or nothing, and I have to recognize that I have limited energy and tracking like that. I have to go easy on the tracking for myself. However, I want to talk about with you the difference, or maybe the similarities, between data and intuition.
So I feel like my intuition is super strong.
Yeah.
It's just, I've tapped into that. It's always been there. I either ignore it or I don't. And what the data does, it's a tool. It's simply a tool that I use to reflect on. So an example of blood work and data points, I can look over the years before my son. The doctor said, you will never have a child. You will never be able to conceive. Never. Well, I have an 8-year-old upstairs sick in bed right now. I do. It happened.
Oh, poor baby. I hope he feels better soon.
Me too.
But yay, a baby.
Yeah. But so here's the data, right? And the intuition of, like, my intuition was like, I know that it's possible. I know it's possible. Even though that the blood work is saying no. And even though I can see the dip and that I have no estrogen, no progesterone, I can see that. And if I make these little changes, if I listen, and this is what I did, I listened to my body, made a few adjustments, and lo and behold, I have Adrian.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, so let's get to the listening. And I love that you talk about the data as a tool, because I think that some people don't use it as a tool. I think some people use it as the end all be all. And I think we have to combine both. Like we have to take the data, but also we have to listen. We have to go deep and understand what our bodies are saying.
Yeah.
And so my question is, how did you begin to do that? Like coming from this place where you're partying all night long, you're working all day. I imagine like the epitome of burning the candle at both ends. How did you start the journey of that deep listening?
Somebody told me to stop doing what I was doing because it wasn't working.
Somebody, like a voice or a person?
An actual person told me. They just looked at me and they said, "You're a wreck." And I was like, "Oh, okay, thanks."
Are you trying to be helpful?
Yeah, because I thought my life was all together. And she was like, "No, your life is not together. And you need to stop trying to, your body's falling apart. Your house is in disarray. Your bills are late. Like the list was long." So she told me, just sit down and meditate. And I had thought that I was a spiritual giant because I had read all these big, windy, wordy books about spiritual practices and Buddhism and different religions. And she was so full of grace. And she just said, you know nothing. And you need to just sit down and breathe. And nobody had people don't tell me what to do. I mean, it's just not something that really happens in my life, which is good and bad. But she had the capacity to do that. And I was at a place where I was able to listen. And so I sat and I learned how to meditate in a different way by using my breath and by going deeper within. And it shifted my perspective in how I saw the world and how I saw the data, right? And how I had conversations with doctors and people in my life. It shifted how I wanted to live in the world. Shortly thereafter, I moved to Thailand and lived in Bangkok for a while. It was really like the earth opened for me.
How did, this is a two-parter. Back then, when you first started that meditation practice and you gave up the lifestyle that you had been living, how did your body speak to you?
Well, I mean, that's tricky because when I was on the pillow or, sitting, my body was calm and quiet. And my symptoms were calm and quiet. They weren't active. And I would find the right supplement or the right thing to eat to nourish my body so it would become calm and heal. Does that make sense?
Totally. Yeah, 100%. So it's like you're trying to emulate that same feeling that you had while you were meditating in the moments that you weren't meditating. Like, what can give me that feeling? This is how I know my body is capable of feeling. So, and I love that because I do think sometimes when we talk about intuition, when we talk about inner voice, we get caught up in thinking that it comes in the form of thoughts or that it comes in like a voice actually talks to you. But sometimes it's literally just how your body feels.
Yeah.
Does your body feel relaxed or does it feel tight? Does it feel strong or does it feel weak? And those are the answers that you seek. And we don't have to make it complicated.
No.
We just have to be willing to be still enough to feel what our body is saying. And I think that's the really challenging part. And so my second part of that question is, how does your body talk to you now? Now that you've been doing it for 21 years, now that you're in a different place of your journey, is it different or is it the same?
It's so interesting. It's easier for me to tune into it now, for sure. Yeah. Right? Like I had, I was in a I call it the dental chair accident, where I was in a dental chair for 3 hours getting, dental work done, and I herniated, 3 discs and bulged one.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was
that takes the dentist to a whole nother level.
Oh yeah, it was very traumatic. I cannot stand the dentist now. It's been a whole thing. And as a result of that, I ended up, with neck issues. And it's been, I went through physical therapy for a year, and it's been brutal. There have been moments where I wasn't able to sleep at night. I'd be sitting up, like, da, 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 da. Okay, let's plop up my pillows. And my husband's like, oh my God, like what's going on here? But the point is that my body still speaks to me, right? And that pain, that chronic condition that I felt like I was in started building up. And, I don't know if you know anything about chronic pain, but if you're in it for long enough, there's a depression that comes, you're sleep deprived. And there's a disconnection that happens there's a disconnection that happened between me and my inner voice. Mm-hmm. Because I just wasn't able. I wasn't present.
Right.
And so I am lucky enough to have a community of some pretty awesome people around me that can, tap me on the shoulder or say, hey, what's going on with you? And, again, I'm open. I'm super open-minded. I believe that, the spirit or the universe or whatever you want to call it speaks through people. And I was sitting with a girlfriend of mine, and she introduced me to hemp. And, I'm in long-term recovery. And I said, no way, I'm not doing that. And she said, I'm just going to leave it for you. And here's my body's in pain, right? Mm-hmm. And she sees my face, and she's like, I'm just going to leave it for you. And, I just let it sit there because it's, in my mind, it's illegal. I'm sober a long time. I can't cross that fence. I've been, doctors have tried to get me on pain meds. I've been like, no, I'm not doing that, because I'm so connected. And, so it just sat in my bathroom for a couple days, and then I finally took it and put it on the outside, topically, mm-hmm. And my body spoke to me, and that pain that I called the ice pick pain in my neck was gone, and I don't know why, except for all I did that was different was I used that hemp oil. Mm-hmm.
I've heard some pretty amazing things about that. I have a friend who, and is it, and I might be wrong in this, is it the same as CBD oil? Is that the same?
Yes. So the government owns that word CBD, right? They have a trademark on that. So, we have to really be careful, I guess.
Okay. I see what you're saying.
CBD, right? So it's hemp oil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. But I've seen it. You can put it in a lotion and rub it on your hands. That's what my friend did. She was having arthritis pain in her mm-hmm. hand, and mm-hmm. she said that she put it on her hand and it never hurt again.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a very, again, I listened, right? Because mm-hmm. I was like, I'm not doing that. Can't do that. But when I had that kind of transformation, and I went into meditation about it, and I prayed about it. I checked in with my doctor and my friends about, and everything's changed since then.
That's fascinating. And what I think is so interesting about that story that you're sharing is it was really, you were telling yourself a story mm-hmm. about what was quote unquote allowed mm-hmm. or not allowed, or what was good or what was not good, which I think we all have so many stories about that. And it was that thought that thought that you decided was true, that was keeping you from what you most needed, from what your body was telling you you most needed, from what God was telling you you most needed.
Yeah. Yeah. That plant.
And so, yeah. Well, and so how do you try to stay, and I'm sure you do, but maybe let me rephrase the question.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to being mindful of these stories,
Mm-hmm.
how do you keep yourself in check of that? How do you really create a life where you're always questioning those stories?
Mm-hmm. Like I said, I have people.
Yeah.
Right? Like my stories will take me away, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's true of all of us.
Yeah, I just, there's a fine line for me between, truth and false, it's so like, is that real or not? And I do a lot of writing in my practice, and usually through my writing, that truth will come out. And then if I'm still in question of it, I run it by, I have a mentor. I have, again, a circle of women that I really know everything about me, that I can check in and say, what do you think about this?
Yeah. Yeah.
Even though I am super tuned into that voice, I've been super tuned into that voice and made some foolish mistakes. That led me down the wrong path.
Do you want to share one of those? I mean, come on. Let's just...
I know, I'm like, okay, wait a minute. Well, I'm just thinking about like this, this startup that I was in, and, my voice was like, oh, this is great. This is like, you're making, $15,000. So like, this is great. You're like, this is awesome. You get to run the show. You're in charge. But meanwhile, the CFO was disrespectful, rude, chauvinistic. Everything. He was against everything that I was against and for. And my inner voice, this inner being, was like, yeah, do it. Just stay. You need that money. Oh, it's great. Mm-hmm. But meanwhile, like, I'm working myself into the ground. He is just so disrespectful to me. And it was a clash. I mean, it was so against my morals and values to be working there. And I just kept doing it because that little voice was like, yeah, this is right. You're helping. You're being of service. Mm-hmm. And then finally, something happened, and it was like he went too far, and I realized, like, the light went on, and I packed my things and left. And there was a difference between packing, like, that voice of, like, it's time to leave, and the voice that was like, you've got this, you're the boss. But I wanted to believe that you've got this, you're the boss voice, because I was getting paid. I was getting the accolades. It looked good, right? Sometimes it's hard to listen to the voice when it's not going to look the way you want it to in the moment.
That is so true.
Right? In the moment. But what inevitably happened is, my life completely changed after that into total bliss.
Well, and I think the beauty of those mistakes that we make when we're not discerning of the difference between our true wisdom and that voice in our head that says, yes, this is what you've always wanted, so much money, or whatever, this relationship feels so good, you always wanted to be married, or whatever is the thing. And we have to develop that discernment. And so every time we have a situation like that, it allows us to hear more deeply, to be more attuned to the voice we do want to listen to. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the beauty. Like, we always have to look back on those and be like, okay, what was this for? Like, because I really believe that that we're always learning from those, and there's no requirement that we always make the right decision, that we're always perfect, because God knows that's not going to happen.
Right. Yeah.
So let's talk about experimenting, because I think as a biohacker, I mean, when I think of biohacker, immediately I think of Dave Asprey, the bulletproof guy. And I like Dave. I listen to his podcast. I go in waves. Like, I can only do so much, and then I have to take a little break.
Yeah.
Because it's so
his way,
sciencey, and he feels very strongly about how you should be doing things. And but it's interesting to me, the idea of experimenting, of trying something new and seeing if it works for you. And so I'd like to know for you, maybe you could share with us like an experiment that you took on your body or on yourself, and how you decide if it's working or not, how you create sort of a checklist or checking in with your intuition, but at the same time checking that data. How do you kind of combine those together when you're doing one of these experiments?
So super easy. This is like such a good question. Experimenting. I can start with the bulletproof diet. How about that?
Great. Perfect.
So when Dave first came on, I was, super hooked into him because, oh my God, somebody else was doing what I was doing. Oh my God, somebody else was like experimenting with their body. I thought it was awesome. And so when he kind of bubbled up this whole coffee, with the butter in it, I was like, oh, I've never tried that. I have to try it. I have to do it. He says it's good. And I kind of got on that bandwagon for a while.
Ditto.
Yeah. And here's the cool thing, right? Here's data points and blood work. I have blood work before, during, and after. And, I gained 15 pounds. I was sluggish. But I was experimenting, and I was like, I'm doing everything right. What's wrong? I don't understand this, right? And so I finally had to really get into that, into the meditation of like, what am I doing wrong here, and what am I doing right? And what I realize is what I'm doing right is that I'm super committed and dedicated to my body. I'm disciplined. I have, those are my assets. Those are my tools. But what I wasn't doing is that I wasn't tuning into the ingredients that I was putting into my body. And when I started to investigate, my genome and actually look at like, well, heaven forbid, I don't really metabolize caffeine. Hey.
Ding, ding, ding.
Right? So I was like, the little red flags started appearing in my meditation of like, why don't you investigate your DNA for a while? Or why don't you stop drinking the coffee every day and maybe your stomach won't hurt anymore? But I thought because A, society, because B, Dave Asprey was saying it's the right way, because there's science on it that says, oh, actually, being ketogenic is great, right?
Yeah.
So I had to sit back and get back into my being and stop that practice, right? And investigate what works for me, just like I had been doing for the past 20 years, right? Like go back 21 years and that's what I had to do. I was like, oh, the olive oil, I need to drink olive oil. Oh, okay. Like, I don't know where that comes from. It's just a deep whisper. So I do it. So for me, this started about 5 years ago of this like more plants. You need more plants in your body. You need more plants, Lane. And that has been super, again, I can look at the data points before and after. And I'm not all plant-based, but I am definitely, 80% plant-based. I still do my bone broth. I'll still eat a steak every once in a while, or actually it's like 3 pieces of my husband's steak now. But my body feels more alive when I'm eating plants. My hormones are more balanced, right? So listening to that inner voice of like, you don't have to do what everybody else is doing.
Yeah.
Right? It's been a huge change for me.
Yeah. Well, and what I love about that is you said, well, I had all of the data, like I had my blood work before and during and after, and I felt sluggish. My stomach was hurting all of the time. I gained 15 pounds, because I think that sometimes people will look at someone who calls himself a biohacker and they're like, but like, I don't have the money to get my blood tested every 3 months or the desire to do that. And I think what I hear you saying is you don't have to. Mm-mm. Like your body knows. Yep. Your body will tell you what it wants you to give it and what it needs to nourish. And you just have to be willing to listen and to be willing to accept the fact that it may look different from what you think it should look like.
Yeah.
It's back to that story.
Yeah. It usually does look different.
Yeah. Right? Yeah, totally.
Like, well, plants were not my thing. That was like, oh yeah, I'll eat a salad, but they weren't like breakfast, lunch, and dinner for me, And now it's like, that's a lot of my diet, It's like hemp. That was not on my radar.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting to me because a big thing for me that I go always back and forth with is gluten, because I'm not celiac. I don't have an allergy, but I tell my husband all the time, I think that I'm sensitive, and he makes fun of me. He's like, you're fine. And I'm like, this is what I know. When I eat more gluten, I wake up in the morning and my hands hurt. Like my joints are sore and they're stiff. And and when I cut it out, it's not like that anymore.
Right.
And then, my gut says to me, this is the thing that you need to cut out. It doesn't tell me I need to cut out dairy. It doesn't tell me that I need to do whatever. It says, stop eating wheat and you're going to feel better.
Right.
And I just think that sometimes we don't want to trust it because we think that, like I don't want my husband to make fun of me, or that I'm just being silly, or that I'm just jumping on a bandwagon or not jumping on a bandwagon. But our bodies tell us. And I love that message. I have a question that I wrote down before we got on the recording today. And I'm really interested in your answer. No pressure.
Okay. Oh, now I'm nervous.
Oh, I know. Don't be nervous. I'm interested in knowing how you balance loving yourself right now where you are, understanding deeply your innate worthiness, no matter what, with wanting to be quote unquote better. How do you balance that point for yourself?
There's no balance.
Oh, talk to me about that.
I'm either going to love myself through this or with this or not. Right? Like I feel like when my body is full of love and care, everything works.
Yes.
Like, period. It's my job as this human being to stay mindful of that, right? To not get caught up in my family, all the crazy stuff that happens in my family or my kids' school or the neighbors or, my clients, right? I have to really, I have a daily practice that if I am not doing it, the walls are coming down. There's a huge difference. So it's like, is there a balance? No. It's like, it's a priority to put my self-care and that heart, that love into me, so then I can give back and be present and helpful and be of service to others. Does that make sense?
Totally, 100%. And I'm so glad. I also don't really believe in balance. And so it was kind of a loaded question for me, because I do think that when we're loving ourselves fully, completely, when we're doing the deep listening, like you're saying you did in your life, then we are always evolving upward. We can't help but become more of exactly who we are meant to be.
Exactly.
because that's the path that we're on when we're loving ourselves. And
it's not easy.
It's not easy. It's
Nope.
not easy. And it's especially hard, if you're on Instagram or if you're on Facebook or if you are following any person or have someone that you look up to. But what it really comes down to, and this is what I hear you say over and over and again, it has to be what I need. It has to be what my body needs. It has to be what my heart is telling me to say yes to.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And it's hard when, I just have to go back to like when you're married, you have kids, you have family, you have responsibility, right? Because other needs may like all of a sudden like, oh, I got to deal with all this other stuff. But again, it's like that putting on the oxygen mask, right? I've got to get right and get with oneness with myself before I can play nice with others.
Yeah. And before you can really show up in a way that is serving and show up in a way that is like using all of your gifts. Because if you're, dead, tired, or stressed out, like that's not going to work.
No, it doesn't work.
Oh, Lane, I feel so privileged to have been able to share this space with you. Your quiet presence like exhilarates me in this sort of really quiet way. And I'm so grateful for your wisdom and for you spending time with us to share your story and to share the power of listening so deeply. And I'd love for you to share with my listeners where they can connect with you online and learn more about what you do.
Sure. I've so enjoyed our conversation, Kelly. Thank you so much for having me on the show. You're my people. Thank you.
Yes.
Everyone can find me over at upgradedwoman.com, and I have a little goodie page for your listeners at upgradedwoman.com/her voice, where I have a guide and some great little mini course and all kinds of goodies over there for you guys.
Fantastic. And we'll link to that in the podcast app and on the show notes page. So be sure to click through right from your phone and you can get that. All right. I have one last question for you.
Yes.
In your life right now, what is your inner voice saying to you or asking of you?
Yeah. To get my book done. I'm like,
I need that book. I feel like I need that book, Lane.
It's so interesting. Like I'm on the last, this is like the second to the last edit. And I'm like, I got to get it done. Like get it done. And I keep putting it away and it's like, get it done. So that is really, it's like screaming, jumping up and down. Get it done.
Ooh, that's so exciting. Okay. Well, so here, we'll put this out here for the world to hear. When it comes out, I want you to come back on In Her Voice and share with us about the book. And I can't wait to talk to you then.
Thanks. Okay. Okay. That's really, I have to, like, it's got to get done.
It has to be done now.
Awesome.
All right, Lane, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks so much. Take care.
Yes. So good. I love how she really emphasized how important it is to make your self-care and your self-love a priority. It's not about balance, you guys, because I believe there's no such thing as balance, really. We have to be pouring into ourselves in order to be pouring out into others. And I don't know about you, but that's what I want to do. That's what I feel I'm here for, is to serve. And in order to do that, I need to be taking care of me and understanding on a very personal level what I need to be at my best. And that means nutrition, that means sleep, that means how I'm dealing with my stress, that means my daily practices for connecting with my inner voice, all of those things. And so I really want to encourage you to start figuring out exactly what works for you. And here's the thing, your what works for you is not going to be the same as mine, but you can use people that you look up to and other ideas as a starting point. So you can start to experiment, like Lane said, with different ideas and see what works for you. And you know what? If it doesn't work for you, that's okay. Like, it's okay if it seems like it's working for everyone else and it's not working for you. It is a beautiful thing when you start to identify that you are 100% unique. And when you can start making decisions based on what feels good in your body. So I really, really hope that you enjoyed that. I'd love to hear your thoughts, any feedback, any comments you have. You can always reach out on Instagram at Kelly J. Covert or shoot me an email, kelly@kellycovert.com. And also, I want to encourage all of you, if you were not already, to put yourself on my mailing list. So I send out lots of good things. And when you sign up for the mailing list, you can choose the categories you're interested in. If you want to hear more about Beautycounter and receive offers and things like that from me about Beautycounter, you can do that. If you're not interested in that, totally cool. And you can sign up just to get updates on In Her Voice or just to learn more about when I have masterminds or when I'm doing workshops, all of that good kind of stuff. So to put yourself on that newsletter list, head on over to kellycovert.com/newsletter and you can do it right there. It only takes a second. And actually, in the podcast app that you're listening to, there should be a link right at the top of the show description, and that will take you right to there. So go put your name on that mailing list and get ready to get some goodness sent to your inbox. As always, I want to remind you that you are on this world, on this planet, for a reason. I believe that with my whole heart. And if you walk away from this episode today with nothing else but to know this, that you matter and that we need you doing your work in the world, you are worthy.